margin a couple of weeks ago, and now it goes to the Senate. It now, I guess, has been assigned to a Senate committee. It's been assigned to the Senate Judiciary Committee, and we have its chairman on the line with us right now, Republican Senator Whitney Westerfield, who joins us again here on Cruiser and Cruise. Senator Westerfield, nice to have you back, sir. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, Dave, thanks for having me back. I appreciate it.
There's news accounts today, Senator, that you're not sure if you're even going to allow a hearing. What are your qualms or questions that might keep you from having a hearing on this issue? And then also, isn't a hearing a place for some of these questions or problems to be aired out and to be discussed?
Well, sure. The committee is really good for that. But as the chair, I've got the authority to decide whether or not to hear the bill in the first place. And right now, I have a lot of misgivings and don't want to move the bill forward without addressing those, or at least getting an explanation from Representative Nemes or Chairman Petrie, who worked on the committee substitute that the House eventually passed, to explain why some of the policy decisions are in there that are in there. And there are several issues. I haven't finished reading the bill yet. I'm through Section 19 of the bill. Not quite halfway through it in terms of page numbers, anyway. And I've marked up and put notes in the margins in every section so far about issues and concerns, or just questions. Why are we doing this? Why are we allowing that? That sort of thing. And I'll sit down with the bill sponsor soon and go through all those.
Can you share with us a couple of the questions that you have that are apparent to you now?
Sure. I mean, as I said, every section I've got some notes, but there are a couple of things that come to mind. Right off the top of the bat, I'd say this bill allows people from other countries that have marijuana programs to come here to get it. Not sure why we're doing that. It allows one adult to be a quote-unquote designated caregiver for another one, to administer the medical marijuana or even to acquire it and then to administer it. And if I'm a parent doing that to my child, that's one thing, and I get that. But for one adult to another, and you can do that according to the bill in all but one place, you can do it for up to 3 people. What's the legal relationship? That's not defined anywhere. You know, if I wanted to go out and get appointed a guardian for someone who's got some sort of issue or a family member, I have to go to court. And I'm not suggesting we need to do that. Mm-hmm. But this bill doesn't define what that relationship is. What are my obligations legally as a designated caregiver to the person I'm administering that to? What's my duty? And what standards of care do I need to give or live up to? And so far, what I've read doesn't lay any of that out, and I'm not aware if the bill does that. There are dozens of places where throughout the whole bill that I've read so far, where we put our thumb on the scales and we dictate market terms and pressures. In Section 19 in particular, there's a place where the department or the bureaucracy that is created by the bill dictates whether or not the fees charged by certain entities or cannabis business are reasonable. It tells us to implement, or tells cannabis business to implement appropriate security measures to make sure there aren't thefts or diversion of medical marijuana, but doesn't define appropriate. At one point it says that cannabis businesses must demonstrate sufficient capital such that it can establish business and meet the needs for its Why does the government bureaucracy, we don't dictate this level of micromanagement for any other industry that I'm aware of.
Yeah, but Senator, if this is not micromanaged, it's not going to pass a Republican-controlled House or Senate. Do you think? I mean, you had to. I mean, when I went to
I get the sense that that's true, but that goes back to my meeting coming up with the sponsor and with Chairman Petrie, Representative Nemes, and Representative Petrie. I'm under the impression some of the things in this bill that we otherwise wouldn't have put in a bill are in there to get a compromise effort through the House. And I'm assuming I'll find that out when I sit down and talk with them. Mm-hmm. So maybe there's an explanation. Maybe they can justify why we're doing this, that, or the other. But you asked, what are the objections I have looking at for the first time this year? Those are a couple of the quick examples that come to mind.
Yeah, there's a lot of restrictions in this, and some of the restrictions.
There's no question about that.
And some of the restrictions on the marketplace you have an objection to, but I'm thinking without it being a very restrictive bill, it wouldn't have a chance, and you know what, of passing.
Well,
so that's
and
probably
we need to talk about a bigger issue, and this is part of the conversation. Whether the advocates want it or not, whether the opponents want it or not, we're looking at all this stuff. And one of the things that we have to consider is what this bill represents from a policy standpoint. Earlier on in the bill, and I've got it here in front of me, and I couldn't find it to save my life, but I marked it. There's a section in here, a little paragraph, that essentially says, and I'm going to summarize, but essentially says if you're a peace officer, you can't use your resources, including your time, it says, to enforce violations or what you think are violations of the Controlled Substances Act. So, I just found that it's in Section 5, subparagraph 4, and that's of the committee substitute, so it might be different. It's on page 19 in the committee substitute. But it's the direct opposite of Senate Bill 1. Senate Bill 1 of this year is a bill, and you and I may have talked about it before, and you may have talked with other senators about it. It's a bill that prohibits sanctuary cities. So cities, we're saying you cannot ignore federal law. You've got to, and we're telling law enforcement throughout Senate Bill 1, you've got to stand up for federal law. But in this bill, we're saying, well, except this federal law. This federal law over here, we're okay with you ignoring. And I think it's a problem, and I think if we keep going down this road, it's going to get worse. What other federal law down the road are we going to decide to ignore?
Do you worry that opening the door to medical marijuana opens the door then to future recreational marijuana? Are you afraid of it from a slippery slope standpoint?
I don't worry it. I am certain of it.
Okay.
Because it's happened in every other jurisdiction that I'm aware of.
Right.
Ohio right now, which has a robust medical marijuana program. I met with two businessmen yesterday in my office from a company in Ohio that operates and does well and is very successful apparently in Ohio. And they're here because they've got a medical marijuana program, and they're interested in making sure that, and they support House Bill 136. And it's modeled apparently after Ohio, or at least parts of it are.
Yeah.
But Ohio right now, in fact, earlier this week, has reported that they've got a ballot initiative to go full recreational.
They do. It's being reviewed now, and in order to get the signatures, they're going to have to come up with about $3 million to go out and get those signatures to put it on the ballot. But yeah, I don't know that a state ever started with recreational marijuana and then did medical later.
So I think that's coming. I mean, even the day that it passed off the House, I put out a tweet. I said, well, there it goes, ... and here it comes. And as it's coming to the Senate, and a couple of people retweeted it, and somebody commented on the tweet, well, now we need to, don't celebrate yet. We got to get it through the Senate. Next year we need to work on mushrooms. And I thought, good grief, man. Just that the drumbeat for moving further and further is out there. And again, I'm not going to fuss at those people who want those things and want recreational marijuana. But this legislature is not ready for that. Not recreational, and I'm not sure the Senate is ready for medicinal marijuana. Yeah, maybe it is.
Nemus makes it sound like the votes in the Senate are there, but I guess he said he's one of the sponsors in the House.
Well, I think if you looked at the whole Senate, maybe they are there. I don't know that they're there in the Senate Republican caucus, but you know, I haven't whipped the vote. I haven't gone to poll everybody. I'm still working through the bill, and we'll find out. I know the caucus is going to have a conversation about it eventually. We're going to hear from Senator Steve West, who has sponsored the same bill and has Senate Bill 107 this year and has advocated for it ever since he's been here. So I know we're going to talk about it. It's not being dismissed out of hand at all. I wouldn't be going through the bill and reading it and marking it up if I – and in fact, I'll tell you, and I've told others, people have emailed, I've shared this with, I'm reading it with a little girl in mind from my district. In 2014, we passed Clara's Law, and Clara's Law made it was the CBD oil, or the CBD bill that we passed in 2014, that you could argue was overly strict because I don't think it's done any good. But that particular bill was named after a little girl in my hometown whose parents are in my Sunday school class, and Clara has Aicardi syndrome. It's a neurological disorder, and she has seizures, and they were traveling to other states to get various kinds of THC products, marijuana or CBD oils and whatever else they could find to try to treat those seizures, putting drops under her tongue and doing that sort of thing. And it was working wonders. I'm reading the bill with that little girl in mind. I'm not trying to kill it. Others might, but that's not what my objective is. I just want to make it, if the votes are there for it to move forward, either in committee or on the floor, I want it to be the best bill that I can make it.
Well, there was a tweet today from the Kentucky Democrats, another instance of Republicans blocking bipartisan popular bills just because. Enough of this obstruction. You've seen the polls. It seems to have overwhelming support. Are you skeptical of the polls? Are you trying to do this and remove the politics from it? And are you Senator, and we're talking with Senator Whitney Westerfield, the chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee. He's making a decision whether or not he's going to hear the medical marijuana bill, House Bill 136, that passed a couple of weeks ago in the House. Are you personally skeptical of some of the proponents and the claims that are made about medical marijuana and what all it can treat?
No, I have some skepticism about the various conditions, and I certainly don't understand the clinical or the pharmaceutical qualities of it and the chemical makeup of it. I only am familiar with it to the extent that I've prosecuted it and dealt with the Kentucky State Police Lab and dealt with it from a criminal prosecution side. So I can't speak with a physician's perspective or a clinician's perspective on it. But I've heard too many stories from constituents, from people outside my district, from across the state, and from across the country. But I'm certainly focused about the ones that are in my district and are in my state. I've heard hundreds. I've just heard too many, and from people who I've known for years, or I've come to know and have now known for years, that aren't the kind of people that I would ever have prosecuted, but who have a loved one who suffered with end-stage cancer, and the only thing that they found relief in was some form of marijuana or its byproducts. Mm-hmm. And I've heard stories and emails that I've gotten from folks all over the state today. There are too many of those stories to dismiss that. Right. I believe there's some value to it. That's why, and I think about Clara, who clearly, I've seen it firsthand. I've seen her benefit from products that come from this plant and its cousin plants, and I think it's worth talking about. That's why I'm not saying no just because just because I want to. I just want to read the bill like I do every other bill that's in my committee to make sure I'm okay with it. And then I'm going to make a presentation to the caucus. I'm sure Senator Steve West will do the same. Proponents and opponents both will have a chance to speak. I don't know if it'll move forward or not, but this is part of the process. This is what I do with every bill, and this particular bill is going to get extra scrutiny because of what it is. But I'm not an automatic no, and I'm not trying to mark it up with an eye for killing it. I'm trying to make it, trying to understand it and be comfortable with it so that I can vote one way or the other. You
have a timeline. You say you're giving this extra scrutiny as to how long it may be before you reach a decision.
I've got a meeting. I don't know, but I've got a meeting next week with the bill with Representative Nemes and Representative Petrie, and that might be the first of a couple meetings because we don't have much time together that particular day. But I'm going to give them, run through real quick all my stuff, all my notes and questions, and meet with them again, hopefully next week again, if we can find a time to all be together, and just figure out, and just walk through all my notes and questions. And then I'll present it to the caucus. Steve West will too. We'll see where the caucus stands.
Yeah, to take it from there, Senator Whitney Westerfield will be watching and following. He's chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee. He's reading the medical marijuana bill, and I guess we'll know soon whether or not it'll get a hearing in his committee. Senator Westerfield, again, it's a pleasure talking to you on the program, and thanks for joining us, and hope to have you back.
I appreciate it. It's my pleasure.
Thank you.